Discipline is supposed to fix your life. That's what you've been told, directly or indirectly, for as long as you can remember. Wake up early, control yourself, follow a routine, stay consistent, ignore how you feel, and do what needs to be done. Discipline is praised as the solution to almost everything. If someone is failing, the answer is discipline. If someone is lost, the answer is discipline. If someone is unhappy, unmotivated, or stuck, the advice is always the same: become more disciplined. And for a while, this idea feels comforting. Discipline gives structure to chaos. It creates order. It makes you feel responsible, mature, and in control. But there is a problem almost no one wants to talk about. Many of the most disciplined people are still stuck in the same place. They wake up early, follow routines, sacrifice comfort, and repeat the same actions every day, yet nothing meaningful changes. Their lives become more organized, but not more free. More controlled, but not more rewarding. This creates a quiet confusion. If discipline is the answer, why does it fail so often? And why does questioning discipline feel almost wrong, as if you are attacking a virtue instead of an idea? Discipline has become more than a tool. It has become a moral identity. Being disciplined is seen as proof of character. It earns respect, even when it produces no results. A disciplined person is admired for their consistency, their restraint, their ability to endure discomfort. And because of this, discipline is rarely questioned. When progress doesn't come, people don't question the system they are disciplined within. They question themselves. They assume they are not disciplined enough, not strict enough, not committed enough. So they double down. They wake up earlier. They cut out more pleasure. They push harder against their own limits. And slowly, discipline stops being a means to an end. It becomes the end itself. The routine becomes sacred, even when it leads nowhere. The habit is protected, even when the outcome is empty. This is how discipline turns from a tool into a trap. What makes this especially dangerous is that discipline works just enough to keep people trapped. It improves small things. Your sleep gets better. Your focus improves. Your days feel more controlled. But the bigger picture stays the same. Your income does not change. Your freedom does not increase. Your options remain limited. Discipline helps you tolerate a life that isn't actually improving. It teaches you how to endure dissatisfaction quietly. And because endurance is praised, this feels like progress. People confuse stability with growth. They confuse consistency with movement. They confuse self-control with direction. And as long as discipline provides the feeling of doing something right, people stop asking whether they are doing the right thing at all. This is why discipline is so loved by systems. Schools reward disciplined students, not necessarily curious ones. Companies promote disciplined employees, not necessarily independent ones. Discipline creates predictability. Predictable people are easy to manage. They show up on time, follow instructions, and accept slow progress as normal. Discipline makes systems efficient. It does not make individuals powerful. But this distinction is never made clear. Instead, discipline is sold as freedom, when in reality it often teaches people how to function inside limits they never chose. And once discipline becomes part of someone's identity, letting go of it feels like failure. Questioning it feels dangerous. Because if discipline is not the answer, then a much harder question appears. What if all this control, all this sacrifice, all this effort has been applied in the wrong direction? That question is what most people avoid. Because discipline feels productive, it gives certainty in a world full of uncertainty. Thinking deeply about direction, leverage, and outcomes feels risky. It forces you to admit that routines can be wrong, habits can be meaningless, and consistency can be wasted. Discipline protects people from that realization. It keeps them busy, controlled, and exhausted. And as long as they are disciplined, they can tell themselves they are doing the right thing, even when nothing is changing. That is why discipline fails most people. Not because it is useless, but because it is trusted blindly. And blind discipline does not lead to freedom. It leads to a well-organized form of stagnation. The most dangerous thing about discipline is not that it doesn't work, it's that it works just enough to delay realization. Discipline improves surface-level problems, which makes people believe they are moving forward. They become more punctual, more organized, more consistent. Their days feel cleaner, their routines feel solid, and because chaos reduces, they mistake relief for progress. But relief is not growth. Order is not advancement. Discipline can remove disorder without creating opportunity. And when opportunity doesn't arrive, disciplined people don't stop and reassess. They assume the answer is more discipline. This is how people become experts at repeating the same life with higher efficiency. They optimize habits without questioning outcomes. They perfect routines that serve systems better than they serve themselves. Discipline also changes how people measure success. Instead of asking whether their life is expanding, they ask whether they followed the routine. Instead of asking whether their choices are compounding, they ask whether they stayed consistent. This shift is subtle but devastating. Results become secondary. Obedience becomes primary. As long as the routine is followed, failure feels justified. "At least I'm disciplined" becomes a quiet defense against disappointment. Discipline becomes a shield that protects the ego from harder questions, because asking whether the routine itself is wrong would mean admitting that years of effort may have been misapplied. That realization is far more uncomfortable than waking up early or denying pleasure. This is why disciplined people often tolerate situations others leave. They stay longer in jobs that don't grow them. They stay longer in systems that cap their upside. They stay longer in lives that feel narrow but stable. Discipline teaches endurance, not escape. It rewards patience in environments where patience is exploited. And because disciplined people are reliable, they are often given more responsibility without proportional freedom. More work, more expectations, more pressure, less leverage. Discipline makes them trustworthy inside the system, but replaceable within it. The system does not need disciplined people to think, it needs them to persist. What makes this even more subtle is that discipline is constantly framed as self-mastery. It sounds empowering. Control yourself, conquer your impulses, eliminate weakness. But control without direction is not mastery, it is containment. A disciplined person who never questions direction is not free. They are controlled from the inside. Their routine becomes their cage, and they guard it fiercely because it gives them identity. Without it, they would have to confront uncertainty. They would have to admit they don't know if what they are doing actually leads anywhere. Discipline removes that discomfort by keeping them occupied. This is why questioning discipline triggers defensiveness. People don't hear a critique of a method, they hear a threat to who they are. Discipline has become proof of worth, proof of seriousness, proof of being better than others. So when discipline fails to produce results, the failure is internalized. People assume they are not disciplined enough. They rarely consider that discipline might be amplifying the wrong direction, that it might be helping them tolerate a life that isn't aligned with what they actually want. And as long as discipline keeps them functional, respectable, and exhausted, they never pause long enough to ask whether functionality is the same as fulfillment. At some point, discipline begins to replace thinking. Not because disciplined people are incapable of thought, but because thinking feels dangerous once routines are established. Routines create certainty. Thinking introduces doubt. When your life is built around discipline, questioning direction threatens everything you've worked to maintain. So most people don't question it. They stay loyal to the routine even when the results stop changing. They confuse consistency with correctness. The longer they stay disciplined, the harder it becomes to admit that discipline alone is not solving the problem. This is why so many disciplined people feel secretly anxious. On the surface, their lives look controlled. Underneath, there is a quiet fear that all this effort may not be leading anywhere meaningful. Discipline also has a hidden side effect. It trains people to accept delayed dissatisfaction. "It will be worth it later" becomes the default justification. Later turns into years. Years turn into decades. And the reward keeps moving just far enough to stay believable. Discipline teaches people how to wait, but waiting only works if something is actually coming. When there is no leverage, no compounding, and no change in position, waiting becomes another form of stagnation. Disciplined people often become very patient in situations where patience is not rewarded. They stay because leaving feels irresponsible. They endure because endurance feels noble. And slowly, endurance becomes a substitute for progress. This is especially visible in environments that reward discipline but punish initiative. Corporate systems, academic tracks, rigid career ladders. Discipline is praised because it keeps things predictable. Predictable people do not disrupt systems. They don't ask for more than what is offered. They don't challenge the structure. They adapt themselves to it. Discipline helps them climb slowly, but it rarely allows them to escape. And because disciplined people are dependable, they are often trusted with more responsibility without more autonomy. They become essential but never irreplaceable, valuable but not powerful. Discipline keeps them busy proving reliability instead of building leverage. What almost no one tells disciplined people is that discipline amplifies whatever system you are in. If the system compounds, discipline accelerates growth. If the system caps upside, discipline accelerates burnout. Discipline does not discriminate. It does not judge direction. It only repeats. That is why disciplined people can move very fast in the wrong direction. They mistake speed for progress. They mistake effort for impact. And because discipline feels virtuous, they rarely stop to question whether their discipline is being used against them. There is a moment, usually quiet and private, when disciplined people sense this truth. It arrives late at night or early in the morning when routines are followed but satisfaction is missing. When effort feels heavy instead of hopeful. When progress feels theoretical instead of real. That moment is usually ignored. People return to their routine because routine feels safer than uncertainty. Discipline gives them something to hold on to. And as long as they are disciplined, they can delay the more frightening question. What if discipline is not the missing piece? What if it is the reason they have stayed where they are? If you are disciplined, this is where the discomfort becomes personal. Because discipline gives you something to point to, it gives you proof that you are trying. Proof that you are responsible. Proof that you are not lazy. And that proof becomes emotionally important. It protects you from criticism, but it also protects you from honesty. As long as you are disciplined, you can tell yourself that progress is only a matter of time, that you are doing everything right, that the results will eventually catch up. But discipline does not guarantee direction. It only guarantees repetition. And repeating the wrong actions more efficiently does not create success. It creates exhaustion with a clean schedule. Ask yourself something carefully. Do your disciplined routines actually change your position, or do they just maintain it? Do they increase your options, or do they simply make your current situation more tolerable? Do you feel closer to freedom, or just better at surviving where you are? These questions feel uncomfortable because they attack the safety discipline provides. Discipline makes life predictable. Predictability feels like control, and control feels like progress, even when nothing is expanding. Many disciplined people are not moving forward. They are standing still very efficiently. This is why discipline often replaces courage. Courage requires uncertainty. It requires stepping into situations where routines do not exist yet. Discipline avoids that. It keeps you inside what you already know how to manage. You wake up early. You follow the plan. You do what you did yesterday. Discipline rewards familiarity, not growth. Growth almost always begins where routines break down. where you don't know exactly what to do next, where effort alone is not enough and decisions actually matter. Discipline keeps people from that edge because the edge feels irresponsible. It feels unsafe. It feels like losing control. And then there is guilt. Discipline creates a strange kind of guilt around rest and reflection. Disciplined people feel uncomfortable doing nothing, even when nothing is exactly what they need. Sitting quietly and thinking feels unproductive. Changing direction feels like quitting. Letting go of a routine feels like failure. So they stay busy. They stay controlled. They stay disciplined. And they quietly wonder why the discipline that was supposed to set them free feels like a weight they can never put down. This is the point where most people stop listening, because the idea that discipline might be part of the problem is too threatening. It challenges years of identity, years of sacrifice, years of self-control. Accepting this would mean admitting that discipline alone was never the solution, that it may have been a substitute for something harder, something riskier, something uncertain. And that realization is where the real discomfort begins. Discipline feels powerful because it focuses on control. Control over time, control over behavior, control over impulses. And control is comforting in a world that feels unpredictable. But control is not the same as power. Power comes from leverage, from positioning, from being able to change outcomes without repeating the same effort endlessly. Discipline, on its own, does none of that. It only ensures that effort continues. This is why disciplined people often become excellent at sustaining effort in environments that do not reward it. They learn how to function under pressure, how to tolerate stress, how to accept limits as normal. Discipline helps them adapt to constraints instead of questioning them. This is also why institutions praise discipline so aggressively. Schools reward disciplined students because they follow rules. Companies reward disciplined employees because they meet expectations. Discipline creates predictability, and predictability makes systems efficient. But efficiency is not freedom. A disciplined person inside a rigid system becomes very good at maintaining that system. They become reliable, dependable, and consistent. But none of those traits guarantee upward movement. In fact, they often delay it. The more disciplined someone becomes, the more responsibility they are given, without a corresponding increase in autonomy. They carry more weight, but they do not gain more control over direction. What is rarely acknowledged is that discipline can be used as a replacement for leverage. Instead of changing the structure of their work, people increase discipline. Instead of finding ways to scale impact, they tighten routines. Instead of questioning whether the system rewards their effort, they focus on being better at complying with it. Discipline becomes a way to avoid asking strategic questions. It feels productive, so it silences doubt. It feels responsible, so it earns respect. But respect without leverage does not change outcomes. It only makes stagnation look respectable. Over time, discipline reshapes identity. People stop seeing themselves as individuals with choices and start seeing themselves as roles that must be maintained. The disciplined worker, the disciplined student, the disciplined provider. These identities come with pride, but they also come with limits. Once discipline becomes who you are, changing direction feels like self-betrayal. Letting go of routines feels like losing control. Even when discipline is no longer producing results, people cling to it because it gives them certainty in a life that otherwise feels uncertain. And certainty, even when it is limiting, often feels safer than freedom. This is the quiet danger of discipline. It keeps people functional enough to survive, but not strategic enough to escape. It teaches endurance where adaptability is needed. It rewards repetition where leverage is required. And because discipline is praised as virtue, people rarely see it as something that can hold them back. They see it as the only thing keeping them together, which is why they protect it, even when it is no longer serving them. The hardest part for disciplined people is not working harder. It is letting go. Letting go of routines that no longer serve them. Letting go of habits that once felt productive but now only maintain the same outcomes. Letting go of the belief that consistency alone guarantees progress. Discipline makes letting go feel like failure. It convinces people that stopping, pausing, or changing direction means they lacked character. So instead of stepping back, disciplined people tighten their grip. They add more structure, more rules, more control. And in doing so, they trap themselves even further inside a life that feels organized but limited. This is where discipline quietly replaces courage. Courage requires acting without certainty. It requires choosing paths that don't come with routines yet. It requires risking inefficiency, mistakes, and embarrassment. Discipline avoids all of that. Discipline prefers what is repeatable, familiar, safe. It keeps people operating inside boundaries they already understand. And because those boundaries feel manageable, they rarely notice that those same boundaries are also keeping their lives small. Discipline protects people from chaos, but it also protects them from opportunity. There is a subtle trade happening here that most people never consciously acknowledge. Discipline offers comfort in exchange for possibility. It gives you a sense of control, but it asks you to give up flexibility. It gives you predictability, but it limits surprise. Over time, disciplined people stop asking what is possible and start asking what is manageable. They choose certainty over upside. They choose routines over risk. And because discipline is praised by society, this trade feels responsible, mature, sensible. But responsibility without ambition does not create growth. It creates maintenance. This is why disciplined people often feel strangely threatened by change, even when they are unhappy. Change introduces variables. Variables break routines. Routines are where disciplined people feel competent. Outside of them, they feel exposed, uncertain, inexperienced. And because discipline has given them identity, stepping outside routine feels like losing themselves. So they stay, they endure, they repeat, and they slowly confuse endurance with purpose. What makes this especially tragic is that discipline is not the enemy. Discipline is powerful, but power without direction is wasted. Discipline multiplies whatever direction you are already moving in. If that direction compounds, discipline accelerates growth. If that direction is capped, discipline accelerates burnout. Most disciplined people never question direction because discipline taught them not to. It taught them to obey plans, not design them, to execute routines, not evaluate outcomes. And as long as discipline keeps them functional, they postpone the one question that actually matters. Is this effort moving me towards something that can grow without me pushing it every day? That question is uncomfortable because it removes discipline as a shield. It forces accountability. It forces clarity. And clarity is far more demanding than self-control. Discipline asks you to repeat. Clarity asks you to choose. And choosing means accepting uncertainty, risk, and responsibility. That is why discipline fails most people. Not because it lacks power, but because it is used to avoid the very thinking that would make it useful. At some point, disciplined people begin to sense that something is missing, even if they can't explain it clearly. They feel tired, not just physically, but mentally. The routine that once gave structure now feels heavy. The habits that once felt empowering now feel restrictive. Progress feels theoretical, something that should be happening but somehow isn't. And because disciplined people are trained to push through discomfort, they ignore these signals. They treat them like weakness. They assume the answer is more control, not more clarity. This is how burnout happens quietly, not through chaos but through order, not through excess but through restraint. There's a difference between being disciplined and being effective, but the two are often confused. Discipline is about consistency. Effectiveness is about outcome. Discipline repeats effort. Effectiveness changes position. Many disciplined people never stop to ask whether their actions are actually altering their leverage, their reach, or their options. They measure success by how well they followed the plan, not by whether the plan itself deserves loyalty. And because discipline rewards compliance, not questioning, this mistake can continue for years without being noticed. This is why disciplined people often become defensive when their results are questioned. The routine feels personal. The sacrifice feels personal. The discipline feels earned. So when someone points out that nothing is really changing, it feels like an attack on character, not a critique of strategy. Discipline turns effort into identity, and identity resists change. Letting go of discipline feels like losing moral ground, even when holding on to it is what keeps life small. The uncomfortable truth is that discipline is often used to compensate for the absence of leverage. When leverage is missing, people increase discipline. When impact does not scale, they tighten routines. When freedom does not grow, they wake up earlier. Discipline becomes a way to stay busy while avoiding the harder work of redesigning direction. And because discipline feels virtuous, it hides this avoidance very well. It allows people to feel productive while remaining stuck. This is why discipline alone rarely creates freedom. Freedom comes from building something that grows beyond your direct effort, something that compounds, something that does not require you to push every day just to stay in the same place. Discipline can support that process, but it cannot replace it. Used alone, discipline turns life into a loop, predictable, controlled, exhausting. And once someone is fully inside that loop, escaping it feels irresponsible, even though staying inside it slowly drains them. What most disciplined people fear is not failure, it is uncertainty. Discipline protects them from uncertainty by keeping everything scheduled, planned, and controlled. But uncertainty is where opportunity lives. Growth almost always requires stepping into situations where routines do not exist yet, where outcomes are unclear, where effort may not immediately pay off. Discipline avoids that space. It keeps people operating where they feel competent, even when competence is no longer producing progress. And so, disciplined people keep going, not because it is working, but because stopping feels worse. Because without discipline, they would have to confront the possibility that they have been managing effort instead of building direction. That realization is far more uncomfortable than exhaustion, which is why so many people remain disciplined long after discipline has stopped serving them. The truth is not that discipline is useless. The truth is that discipline has been misunderstood. Discipline is not meant to decide your life. It is meant to serve a direction that already makes sense. When discipline is used before clarity, it becomes a tool for maintaining the wrong path. It helps you move faster, but it does not tell you where you are going. And moving faster in the wrong direction only takes you further away from what you want. This is why discipline fails most people, not because they lack it, but because they rely on it to solve problems it was never designed to solve. Discipline cannot tell you whether your effort compounds. It cannot tell you whether your actions create leverage. It cannot tell you whether the system you are disciplined within rewards you fairly or quietly exploits your consistency. Discipline will never question direction for you. It will only repeat whatever you give it. And if what you give it is limited, capped, or misaligned, discipline will faithfully help you stay there longer. Organized, controlled, exhausted. What makes this difficult to accept is that discipline feels like progress. It feels responsible. It feels mature. Letting go of blind discipline feels reckless, even when holding on to it is what keeps life small. People would rather suffer inside a familiar routine than risk uncertainty outside it. Because uncertainty removes excuses. It forces clarity, and clarity demands responsibility for choices, not just effort. That is a level of accountability most people are not prepared for. So, discipline becomes a shield. As long as you are disciplined, you can tell yourself you are doing the right thing. You can delay the harder questions. You can avoid redesigning direction. You can keep functioning without expanding, and society will praise you for it. Discipline earns respect even when it produces no freedom. That is why so many disciplined people remain stuck while appearing successful. Their lives look controlled, but their options remain narrow. The uncomfortable truth is this: discipline only works after you know where you are going and why. Without that, it is just self-control applied blindly. And blind self-control does not create growth. It creates endurance. It teaches you how to survive a life that is not evolving. And once you see that clearly, discipline can no longer protect you from the final question. If discipline has not changed your life yet, what exactly is it protecting? And what has it been quietly preventing you from questioning all this time?